So before we start learning today, the next 2 weeks I will not be here. I'm leaving to Chutzlar Sunday morning for exactly 2 weeks, so I'll miss you. I hope you'll miss me as well. They once asked the Rosh Hashiva, how come you never take a vacation? And he said, for 2 reasons. I'm afraid it's going to hurt the yeshiva. That's the first reason. I'm afraid it's not going to hurt the yeshiva. That's the second reason. So I really hope it's not going to hurt the yeshiva, honestly. And I'm sure it's not going to hurt the yeshiva because we have wonderful Talmidim, and if I'm not going to be here, they'll sit and learn. Be'ez Hashem Yisborach. So this week is Parshas Boi. And the first mitzvah in this parsha is Achodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodoshim, Rishon Hilochem Lechodshei Hashono. And that is the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh. In days of yore, each and every month, Adam came before Beis Din to testify that they saw the new moon. And Beis Din was Makabel Eidos, and they were Mekadesh Es HaChodesh. We no longer have this mitzvah because in the days of the Amiroim, the Luach was developed and everything is fixed in advance. But we do have a mitzvah that we are Mekayim once a month, and that is Kiddush Levanah. So before going into the sources we have in our sheet, what does Kiddush Levanah mean? Are we Mekadesh the Levanah? Do we sanctify the moon? We're not aware that the moon has any intrinsic Kedusha. If it would have Kedusha, maybe it would be a prohibition to enjoy the light that the moon gives. So does the moon have Kedusha? And if it has Kedusha, are we adding on to that Kedusha? What is Kiddush Levanah? Shalosh Teshuvos Maharshag. I would be very surprised if anybody here knows who was the Maharshag. Shalosh Teshuvos Maharshag is Reb Shimon Greenfeld. He was one of the great Gedolim in Hungary. Chelik Gimel Siman Hey. His son asked him, what's Kiddush Levanah? And he says, I think it's just a mistake. It should be Chidush Levanah, because that's the nusach of the bracha we say, Baruch Atu Hashem Mechadesh Chodoshim. And somewhere along the way, Kiddush Levanah became Kiddush Levanah. That is really a mistake. But then he writes, I saw the Beis Yosef and the Darkei Moshe, Siman Tov Chavov, both say Kiddush Levanah. And they made no mistakes if it's in the Beis Yosef and Darkei Moshe. So it should be Kiddush Levanah. So both in Bavli and Yerushalmi, the Nusach HaBrocha is Mechadesh Chodoshim. But a Masechet Sofrim Perek Chof, that's the earliest source. The Nusach HaBrocha is Baruch Atu Hashem Mekadesh Chodoshim. And a Medrash Rabbah, on this posuk, in this week's parsha, there's actually a machlokes. One Manda Omer says Mekadesh Chodoshim, and the other says Mekadesh Chodoshim. Darkei Moshe in Siman Tov Chavov writes, we should not be mezalzel in the minhag to dance by Kiddush Levanah. Al pi soid, it's an inyan gadol, and it is besoid Kiddush HaChodesh. So the Darkei Moshe does say Kiddush Levanah has something to do with Kiddush HaChodesh. It is clear that Kiddush Levanah is the Rabbanon. It's not a mitzvah d'oraisa because all the brachas are midrabbanon. And Kiddush Levanah is a bracha. And what I understand from the Darkei Moshe is the mitzvah d'Rabbanon of Kiddush Levanah is a zeicha to Kiddush HaChodesh. Beis Din were Mekadesh as a Chodesh once a month, and that is Kiddush HaChodesh. And Kiddush HaChodesh is because it is Kiddush HaMoyados. All the Yom Tovim depend on Kiddush HaChodesh. And that is why we say Kiddush Levanah. Because Kiddush Levanah is, like the Darkei Moshe says, besoid Kiddush HaChodesh. And that is why it is Kiddush Levanah. So, in Bavli, the source of this brocha is in Sanhedrin Daf Mem Beis. Source number 2. Omer Rabbi Yochanan kol hamavorach al hachodesh b'zmani ki lemekabel pnei Shechina. And the Gemara says, what is the nusach? In Yerushalmi, the brocha appears in Perek HaRoya in Mesechet Brochas, together with all the other Berchas HaRoya. Now, we have a broad spectrum of Berchas HaRoya. So, how many Berchas HaRoya do you remember? Who remembers Berchas HaRoya? Brochas that we need to say because of things that we see. How many Berchas HaRoya do you remember? Some people sometimes ask me when they see me, could they say Shecholak Mechachmosoi? And I say, Ein lechu brocha levatol agodel mezeh. So recently somebody told me, but he asked 2 other poskim, and they said, you could. So I say, nobody could paskin this shaila better than me. I can't say that about every shaila, but the shaila could you say, Shecholak Mechachmosoi, and me, I am more authorized to paskin than anyone else in the world. And I tell you it's a brocha levatola. But if you really are happy to see me, I say you could say a shachiyano. But I don't want you to stay away for 30 days in order to be able to say a shachiyano. I would prefer seeing you every day. And then you can't even say shachiyano. So Haroya Chachmi Yisrael and Chachmu Mesuolam. Malchi Yisrael and Malchi Mesuolam. What else? Keshet. Nemen Bebrisoi. If you see a total rainbow, when you see lightning, or you see majestic mountains and the great seas, you say a bracha. So there are very many berachas haroya. Is Kiddush Levanah one of them? Haroya Levanah b'chidusho tzorech levorech. Is Kiddush Levanah like any other berachas haroya? B'chodesh Nisan. Roya Ilonis Malavlavim, Shelochise Ba'olamai Klum, V'bora Boi Brios Toivois. Is Kiddush Levanah like all the others, or Kiddush Levanah is different? Source number 3, there's a very klora Haggadara. Yesh la'ayim b'yisoid ha'mitzvah. Ha'im chayav odem liris ha'salvona kedei l'kadsha, or shema eine chayav l'kadsha, elim yir'ena. So let me explain. All the other berachas haroya, when you see, you're mechuyev to say a bracha. Maybe by Kiddush Levanah, when you see, you are allowed to say the bracha. But the chiyuv is a chiyuv every Jew needs to say once a month a bracha and Kiddush Levanah. You cannot say that bracha unless you see the Levanah. But it is not seeing the Levanah that creates the chiyuv. The chiyuv is on you before you see the Levanah. But you cannot make the bracha until you see. In Loshen Kodesh, I would phrase it like this. In all the other berachas haroya, hariya mechayevet. Kiddush Levanah, hariya me'afsheret. But the chiyuv is, you need to say the bracha. And if you need to say the bracha, try to see the Levanah. I think the second interpretation is the right one, and I think it's a machlekes in poskim. Source number 4 is a fascinating tshuva in Noide B'Yehuda. Im ha'moiled shel Rosh Chodesh oder hoyo be'erev Rosh Chodesh, va'az kol hazman Kiddush Levanah bepurim, ba'ofen shel leil Yudalid, leil kriyas ha'megillah hi laila acharon שיכולים לקדש הלבונה. והם לא יקדשו בוי בלילה, עבר הזמן ולא נראית הלבונה כל עשרה יומים, ובליל י"ד באמצע קריאת המגילה, נתפזרו האובים וזורך הלבונה. In the middle of Megillah, a child runs into the Beis Medrash, there's a Levanah outside. And nobody said Kiddush Levanah yet. So the Noide B'Yehuda is Mesupik, what do? And his psak is, you stop the Megillah in the middle, you go out, you say Kiddush Levanah, come back in and finish the Megillah. The Noide B'Yehuda doesn't write it, but I assume that you don't dance Toivim Ha'oirish Boro Olakeinu in the middle of the Megillah. That could wait till after you finish the Megillah. But the Noida B'Yehuda says the Chiyuv, which is Birchas Alavona, in the middle of the Megillah, and then after Kiddush Shavua, you come back and finish the Megillah. The reasoning of the Noida B'Yehuda is this is a mitzvah Averes and this is a mitzvah she'eino Averes. The Megillah is not running away. But nobody could promise you that the Levanah will patiently wait till you finish the Megillah. And that is why the Noida B'Yehuda says, you go out, Kiddush Levanah, you come back, you finish the Megillah. Two Gedolim, Sefer Yehoshua. Who is Sefer Yehoshua? One Sefer Yehoshua is very well known. Harav Hagoren Hagodol Rabbi Yoshua ben Nun. But he wrote no Shalas Tshuvas. So obviously, it's not that Sefer Yeshua. Sefer Yeshua is one of the greatest Gedolim 200 years ago. He corresponds with the K'tzai Sachoshen, with the Nesivos HaMishpat. I don't know why he chose a strange name for his Sefer, Sefer Yehoshua. His name was Rabbi Shua Heschel Ba'abad. He was an uncle of the Minchas Chinuch. He was Rav in Tarnopol before the Minchas Chinuch, and when he passed away, his nephew took over. He disagrees with the Noida B'Yehuda, and so does Reb Shlomo Kluger in Shalas Tshuvas Shnois Chaim. And the fundamental question is this: is it reasonable when you're in the middle of a mitzvah to stop and go over to another mitzvah which you're not at all mechuyev ba? As long as you didn't see the Levanah, you have no mitzvah of Kiddush Levanah. So, oisig mitzvah potam mitzvah. We are all mechuyev in Kriyas HaMegillah, and we're engaged in Kriyas HaMegillah. As long as you didn't see the Levanah, you're not chayev in Kiddush Levanah. So why be mafsek in the middle of a mitzvah you're mechuyev, and go over to a mitzvah that you're not mechuyev? The Noida B'Yehuda will answer, you are mechuyev in Kiddush Levanah. It's not that you don't have a chiyuv. You have a chiyuv. You need to see in order to be able to say Kiddush Levanah, but the chiyuv is on you, even before you see. And therefore, we're dealing with two mitzvahs, and the person is mechuyev in both of them. One is mitzvah Averes, and the other is eino Averes. That's the reasoning of the Noida B'Yehuda. But those that disagree with the Noida B'Yehuda, they assume that, no, as long as you didn't see the Levanah, you're not mechuyev. So it's a mitzvah, the pshita, you're not mafsik in the middle of a mitzvah, and go over to another mitzvah, which for the time being, you have no chiyuv of Kiddush Levanah at all. So I think these great achronim disagree on this very question that we presented. Kiddush Levanah. Is it like all the other Berachos Hariyah? You see, you're mechuyev. You don't see, you're not mechuyev. Or maybe it's different. Let's turn the page. Mogen Avram Tov Chavav Sifkot Nalav Suma Chayev Lekadosh Levanah. A blind man needs to say Kiddush Levanah. Maharshal. And that is Tshuvas Mashal Siman Ayin Zayin. Rabbi Kiva Eger on the spot. Hamarikash Kosev, the Melishna Haroya Mash Mesuma Einoi Mevorech. Who was the Maharikash? Marie Castro, not related in any way to Fidel Castro. Chas v'shalom. He was one of the greatest Gedolim 500 years ago. Maharikash has a few magnificent svarim, Shalas Tshuvas Oile Yankov, also known as Tshuvas Marikash, Erech Lechem, and Shulchan Aruch. And in Erech Lechem, he disagrees with the Mogen Avram and the Marshal. And he says, the Lashon of the Gemara is, Haroya Levanah b'chidusha chayev levorech. Haroya. A blind man doesn't see, he has no chiyuv. If we compare Kiddush Levanah to all the other Berachos Haroya, l'chayre, the Marikash is right. Haroya chaveiroi mevorech. If you don't see him, you don't see a bracha. Haroya keshes ba'onan mevorach. If you didn't see a rainbow, you're just imagining a rainbow. If somebody tells you there's a rainbow, you can't say the bracha. But according to my understanding, which I think that is the Noida B'Yehuda's understanding, you are mechuyev to say Kiddush Levanah. Maybe Riyah is only lechatchila, but it's not ma'akev b'di'evet, because it is not what causes the chiyuv. It's just what enables the bracha. So maybe that is only lechatchila. That's the opinion of the Magen Avraham. So the Magen Avraham would once again prove my point that Kiddush Levanah is different from all the other berachas haraya. So in Brochas Nun Chesam Adalef, there's an amazing story about Rav Sheshes. Two great Amiruim were blind. Who knows who were the two? Rabbi Yosef and Rav Sheshes were both blind. So a king, a non-Jewish king, came to town. There was a great commotion and excitement. Everybody goes to see the king. And the Jews go because they want to make a bracha. Shecholak mechvoidoi lebosav adam. And Rav Sheshes goes. It's a doki. Tells Rav Sheshes, hello, where are you going? He says, people say the king is coming. And the Tzedaki says, Chatz ve'lenahara kegani lai. He says, if a person has vessels, good ones, so he goes to the river to fetch water. But if he has broken kalim, your kalim can't hold water. So where are you going? You're wasting your time. And he means to cheper Rav Sheshes. He needs to annoy Rav Sheshes, and he tells him, you're blind. So where are you going? You're not going to see anything. And Rav Sheshes tells that Tzedaki, come along, and I'll show you I see better than you do. And they both stand there together with hundreds of people, and suddenly there's a big commotion, and the Tzedaki tells his Nebuchadnezzar, a blind neighbor, the king is coming. And Rav Sheshes says, be patient, he's not coming. And he didn't come. Things calmed down. Once again, big commotion. And the Tzedaki tells Rav Sheshes, now he's coming. And Rav Sheshes tells him, I told you to be patient, he's not coming. And it happened the third time. And Rav Sheshes once again tells, no. And then things quiet down, and Rav Sheshes tells the Tzedaki, now look, now he's coming. And the king appeared. And the Tzedaki is shocked, and he asks Rav Sheshes, are you blind or not? How did you know? And Rav Sheshes quotes a Pasuk Novi. V'hinei ruach gedola mefoitz etzorem u'mishabes loim lo beruach Hashem ve'achrei ruach rash lo berash Hashem ve'achrei rash eish lo beish Hashem ve'achrei eish kol demo medaka. And that's when the Shekhinah appeared. And Rav Sheshes says, Malchusa da'ara me'en Malchusa de'rekiya. I don't see, but I know Novi. And this is what the Novi taught us. And then the king arrives, and Rav Sheshes says the bracha. So Rav Sheshes didn't see, and he said the bracha. Does this prove that you don't need to see to say Berchas Haroya? The Birkei Yosef, Siman Reish Tes, brings a Sefer Yad Aharon. We learn from here that a blind man could say all the Berchas Haroya. But is it so unreasonable? If you don't see, how could you say Berchas Haroya? The Birkei Yosef disagrees with the Yad Aharon, and he says, Kvoid Malchus Shani. When you say a bracha on a melech, it's Kvoid Malchus. You could say Kvoid Malchus, a bracha, even if you don't see. I don't understand the Birkei Yosef. All the Berchas Haroya are about something. Keshes Ba'onan is about Zocher Abris. Majestic Mountains is about Kvoid Shemayim, not Kvoid Malchus. So why would this Berchas Haroya be different than all the others? Why does it matter it's about Kvoid Malchus? Every Berchas Haroya is about something. And the fact that it's about something that you could imagine doesn't mean you don't need to see. Chavas Yoer. Does anybody know who was the Chavas Yoer? Was he a Rishon or an Achron? Who was the Chavas Yoer? I quote the Sefer a lot. Judged by the name of the Sefer, you could imagine he's an Achron, right? Names have some significance. That's also an amusing name for a Sefer. His name was Shiur. He was an orphan. His Baba's name was Chava, and that's why he named the Sefer Chava's Shiur. In Yiddish, Shiur shel Chava is Chava's Shiur, and out of respect and gratitude to his grandmother that brought him up, LeTorah veLa'avoda, he wanted to be Mechabed his grandmother, and that's why he called the Sefer Chava's Shiur. And he writes in the introduction that in Yiddish you say Shiur shel Chava is Chava's Shiur, like Moshe's Pinchas or Yankel's Moshe, it's Chava's Shiur, and that's the name Chava's Shiur. And he was an amazing gadol. But he writes one thing in which I totally disagree with him, and I think he made a huge mistake. How do I dare to say this? He wrote a sefer on Shulchan Aruch HaChaim named Makor Chaim. And he wrote that before he published the sefer, the Magen Avraham was printed, and he said, after the Magen Avraham, I have nothing to add, and he was going as his sefer. And I disagree with that. I think he made a huge mistake. He has a lot to say even after the Magen Avraham, and the Makor Chaim is full of Chidushim. So, at least with that, Chava's Shiur, I disagree. And it's amazing because the Sefer was Begeniza 300 years, and it was printed first time in our generation, the Sefer Makor Chaim. 300 years, we didn't have the Sefer. So the Makor Chaim says the Brocha and Kavod Malchus is different because, as we see in the story of Rav Sheshes, when a Melech appears, he's not only seen, he's heard as well. The trumpeters come, and the musicians, and the army vehicles, and there's so much noise and so much commotion. He says that's why you could make a Brocha and Kavod Malchus, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Brokim v'ra'amim usually come together. When you see the lightning, you make a bracha. When you hear the thunder, you make a bracha. So Berachas Haraya is not always seeing, it is hearing as well. That's a different sense. So Kavod Malchus, says the Makor Chaim, you could say either when you see or when you hear. But that doesn't prove by other Berachas Haraya. So I think all the other Berachas Haraya, a blind man cannot say the bracha, only Kavod Malchus, the story of Rav Sheshes. And if a blind man does say Kiddush Levanah, it proves Kiddush Levanah is different than all the other Berachas Haraya. And Kiddush Levanah is a chiyuv. Everybody is mechuyev once a month to say the bracha al Kiddush Levanah, in order to say you should see, and that's the Machlokes Magen Avraham Marikash, is seeing the Levanah Ma'akev B'di'eved, or is it only a lechatchila? So the other sources on our sheet are details. In Kiddush Levanah we have many shaylas. Sometimes you see the Levanah, but it's not 100% clear, and the Levanah is in and out and in and out. So last Kiddush Levanah, we were standing with my kehela, and there was no Levanah, and I said, no, I hope it'll come out, and suddenly the Levanah came out. And I was so proud of myself, maybe I did a moifis. So first, we right away said the bracha, and by the time I could brag about my moifis, the Levanah was in and out 10 times, so I saw it's not about me. So that's a machlokes. When could you say Kiddush Levanah? The Ramah, source number 10. Ein lekadosh hachodesh ela balaylo be'eish haLevanah zorachas v'nehenin ma'oira. Nehenin ma'oira. It needs to be clear, a beautiful moon, and that is why Ben Hashmoshes is no good. Mishnah Brura. Ela balayla lafuka Ben Hashmoshes haLevanah neres ktsas v'dayenu yom. Nehen ma'ira, Mishnah Brura, Hainu be'esh shezrichosa nikeres al gabi karka, im neskas alavona ba'ovim, im ha'avdak v'kolu sheneres alavona memeno v'nehena ba'mevorech, im ha'anan av einoi mevorech. So if the clouds are not dense, and you could see the lavona through the clouds, you could say the bracha. The Mekabolim disagree. Let's have a look at the last three short sources. Moira be'etzba, the Chidah. Yezoah shetei me'ira yofa, va'afilu yesh alei anan dak, lo yavorech. If there's any cloud covering the lavona, even if it's clearly visible, you don't say the bracha. Nahar Mitzrayim. Poshet aminik be'Mitzrayim kamo be'ir HaKodesh Yerushalayim, she'im yesh alavona afilu anan dak v'kolosh, eina mevorech. Ukahora'at ga'on uzenu arav chida b'moira be'etzba. That's the previous source. Im etchilu levorach be'eish shalavona behira, ube'emtza brocha neskasa ba'ovim, yegmoir ha'brocha. Ben Ish Chai, also one of the Sephardi Gedolim, im onan afilu dak, lo yevorech. Going back to Sefer Yeshua, source number 12, he says, you saw the Levanah, and even before you started saying the bracha, it's no longer visible. You still say the bracha, because you saw, as long as it's Torch Chedei Dibur. So the Nahar Mitzrayim, source number 4, says, Im etchilu levorech, you could finish the bracha. Sefer Yeshua goes beyond that. The Levanah was visible. And before we started the bracha, covered by clouds, Torch Kedei Dibur, you still say the bracha. And these questions are quite relevant. Happens all the time, especially in the winter months. So why is it so important to say Kiddush Levanah? Chazal say, Kemekabel pnei shchino. So there's an amazing halacha in Kiddush Levanah and Siman Tov Chavav. Shulchan says, you should say Kiddush Levanah Motzei Shabbos, when people are mevusam and begodim noim. Everybody is in Big Shabbos, people are happy, in a good mood. That is when you say Kiddush Levanah. Is that the same by all the Birchas Aroya? You go to the zoo, you see an elephant, and you say Meshana Abruyas. I'm not aware that people go to the zoo, they wear Big Shabbos. You put on your nicest tie or your streimel because you're going to say Mishana Brias. In the middle of the night there's lightning. You say the Brocha Oisamasa Bereshus in your pajamas. So why is Kiddush Levanah different? Begodim Noim. So it's obvious that Kiddush Levanah is something special. Kemekabel pnei shchino. And that is another reason I think it's not like all the other Berachos Hariyah, which are coincidental. I happen to see I make a bracha. No, this is different. This is Kabbalah's pnei shchino. So this week's parsha, the Ramban writes at the end of the parsha, such powerful words. All my Talmidim know this Ramban Bal Peh. The Ramban talks about Sipi Yetzias Mitzrayim and Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim. Why is this so important? And the Ramban speaks about thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu and believing. Tachlis hayetzira harishayna ve'ein la'el elyon chayfetz b'tachtoinim ki im sheyeda ha'odam v'yodeh le'eloikav shebaroi. Tachlis abriya. And the only thing HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from this world is sheyeda ha'odam v'yodeh le'eloikav shebaroi. Many Sforim were written trying to decipher, to figure out Tachlis Abriya. The Mekabolim have their Mahalach, and the philosophers have their Mahalach. And to the Ramban, it's very simple. Tachlis Yetzira Harishayna. Ve'ein la'el elyon chayfetz b'tachtoinim. Ki im sheyeda odem yodel lekol. But there are Taryag mitzvahs, and each mitzvah is omoik miyim tze'eno. So the Ramban would say, idach pirusha, all boils down to one thing, sheyeda ha'odem. Now realize two things, not one. Sheyeda, recognition, knowledge, belief, and sheyeda. So what is the first thing a good Jew says in the morning? What is the first thing a good Jew says in the morning? What do you say in the morning every day when you get up? Is that according to the Shulchan Aruch? Did you learn Shulchan Aruch? What says the Shulchan Aruch? What do you say the first thing in the morning? In Shulchan Aruch we do not find Moida Ani. It's not in Shulchan Aruch. According to the Gemara Brochas Daf Samech, Sif Aleph Siman Mem Vav, you open your eyes, you say Elokai Neshomesh Shenosato B'Toiroi Atu Baros Atu Yitzarto. Kol Zman Sheshova B'Kirbi Moida Ani Lefonecha. Why do we act differently? The two rights in Siman Mem Vav, because we're not Moitzi Shem Shemayim before Natilas Yadayim. So you need to get up first, and Natilas Yadayim. And because Amei Oretz, it's complicated when you say each and every one of those Berachas HaShachar. That's why our minig is to be mesader all the brachas, but we can't open our eyes without saying anything. That's why we say Moidani, because there is no Shem Shemayim in this tefillah. The first source of Moidani Lefonecho is in Seder Hayoim, Reb Moshe ben Mochia. He is the first source of Moidani. And for many years I was thinking, what does Moida Ani Lefonecho mean? Admission or gratitude? Moida sometimes is, I admit. I assume you learn Bov Metzia in yeshiva. One of the first sugyas of Bov Metzia is Moida b'miktsas. Mona li b'yodcho, ein lecho b'yodi, elo chamishim. Moida b'miktsas atani yeshova. Moida b'miktsas is not saying thank you. He says, I admit. What does Moida Ani Lefonecha? Is it admission or is it gratitude? I quoted the Ramban 5 minutes ago. What's Tachlis Abriya? Sheyeda ha'odam v'yodeh. And I think Moida Ani means both. The Loshen Lefonecha seems to indicate admission. If it's thanks, it should be Modeh Lecha, not Modeh Lefanecha. When a person admits, he admits before the Beis Din. He admits, the defendant admits before the claimant. So I think Moidani Lefonecha is first of all admission, recognition. You open your eyes in the morning, don't take it for granted. Not everybody that goes to sleep wakes up in the morning. And when you open your eyes in the morning, you need to feel and recognize. The reason I opened my eyes this morning is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided that I deserve another day. And he decided, I'm going to give you another day. Don't take anything for granted. Nothing is just because it is. So Moidani Lefonecha means, first of all, I recognize, I feel, I admit that it is you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that decided to give me one more day. And that is why I say again, Moidani Lefonecha, I thank you. I thank you, and my heart is full of gratitude. If you admit and you don't thank, then you're awful. If you thank without admission, then you're stupid. So two things are required. First of all, recognize it is HaKadosh Baruch Hu that gave me back my neshama. And he decided specifically for me I'm going to give him another day. And then you say, thank you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for thinking about me, thanking for your mercy, thank you for your chemla. Shechvartu bi neshmosi b'chemla. And that is what the Ramban teaches us. Sheyeda ha'adam. Before you say thank you, don't just say thank you. Understand why you're saying thank you. Sheyeda ha'adam v'yodel alekav sheberoi. So the Levanah is taken for granted. That's the way it works. That's the way it works, you know. The Levanah shines. Middle of the month it starts to go down, comes back up again. Everything happens because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it to happen. And the Levanah teaches us a huge message. So Chazal say, Umes ha'olam nimshelu l'shemesh, Yisrael nimshelu l'Levanah. All the other peoples have the year of the sun. Jews count the year of the moon. And that seems to be unfair because the sun is huge, far greater and larger than the moon. So why do they get the sun, we get the moon? And I say in Yiddishkeit, lo chashuv kama ta gadol, chashuv kama ta gadel. It's not important how big you are. Do you know about growth? So the sun is huge. So what? He didn't grow 1 millimeter since he was born. He was born huge, and he stayed huge, and he didn't grow 1 centimeter, 1 millimeter since he came to be. So what if you're big? The moon teaches us about growth. He's reduced to oblivion every month, and every month he's back again. And every month he grows from day to day. So the Levanah teaches us about growth, and that is what Yiddishkeit is about. It's not so important how big you are. Are you growing? Are you coming closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Are you better today than you were tomorrow? And that is the real mifchan. That is the real test, and that is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu expects of you, to be like the moon. And that is why Kiddush Levanah is kemakabel pnei hashchina, every month. So this bracha is not like all the other brachas haroya. This is a chiyuv. And when you say the bracha, you need to try to see. According to the Magen Avraham, Riyah is not ma'akev. But everybody agrees, lachatchila, you should see the moon when you come to say the bracha of Kiddush Levanah. So tomorrow morning, when you say Moida Ani, think about what we spoke today. And next time you say Kiddush Levanah, think about what we spoke today. Have a beautiful Shabbos, and we should only share B'Seidas Tovos. The next 2 weeks, Friday, I'll be abroad, Be'ez Hashem. In another 3 weeks, we will see each other.